Hi there, and welcome to our session today. We're with Faye Watts, and Faye is the co-owner of accountancy firm, Fuse Accountants, and she's also a strategic business consultant and coach. And we're going to be talking to Faye today about how to choose a business that can grow and how do you go about that. So welcome, Faye.
Thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. So let's start. So I've heard a lot of life coaches say things like, "Ooh, if you find out what you're really passionate about and you choose to do that, then you never have to work another day in your life again. The passion, choose what you're passionate about, and the profits will come." And I've always been a little bit nervous about that because, I don't necessarily believe that is true for everything. But I know out there are going to be people who are thinking, I've always wanted to do this, so now is the time. So let's kick off today by actually asking, how do you recognise that a business is going to be profitable?
I think the key thing here is when you're starting a business is not to rely solely on gut. And we always say in coaching in a business that often the gut and your intuition is a really key decision maker in when you make business as well as personal life. But this is probably the one time when you really don't rely on your gut. You have to rely on facts and figures. And a simple equation is looking at three things. And what I would normally do with clients in the first instance is draw a Venn diagram, 3 circles overlapping, and just see where the crossover is. And we'd explore passion, because that's key. What are you passionate about? What do you love doing? What's your skill set? So skill set's also very key. What are your skills? What can you do? Also be clear on what you can't do, but what can you do? And the other thing is, what do you need to do to earn a living? And that's the boring bit for a lot of people, because that's the bit perhaps that where they've been employed. So it's just exploring those 3 things. It may just start with a brainstorm, explore those 3 areas: passion, skill set, and how to earn a living, and then bring them together to say, okay, where's the overlap? Okay. So that would be my initial thoughts.
Yeah. And I know in the past we've had conversations about scalability, haven't we, and how important that is.
Yeah, and I think the key thing with facts and figures is to actually look at forecasts. And I think people are fearful of doing financial forecasts or any business planning because they presume that they need to be a kind of esteemed business owner and have a huge of experience. Ultimately, a business plan is getting your ideas on paper. And getting the ideas on paper with some figures. Now, that doesn't mean you have to know the ins and outs of accounting. You certainly don't need to know every penny that you're going to make. You have to have an idea of what you're buying, what you're selling. Is it goods or services? What you're selling it for, and also what the scale. How many of those do you need to sell? Or how many hours or how much time to reach a suitable level of income for you, for the business. That part is really key, but it doesn't have to be on a spreadsheet. It can be some words and some thoughts on a piece of paper that then once you sort of explore that and sort of spend some time investigating what your product's going to sell for, what your service is, and you've done a bit of research, that will expand in time. And that's probably the area that you would rely on your gut, is to ask questions, be curious, find out what other people are doing. There is a little bit of gut, because you often won't know what something is going to sell for, but you might need to compare it to what other people are offering, what other services and products are out there. And I appreciate that's quite vague, but because it really will depend on, are you selling time or are you selling an item, a commodity of some sort, and being really clear on what that is. So I think it starts with, okay, knowing what it is you're going to do for the business, what's to sell, what are you selling, and being really clear with some facts. I'm jumping way ahead here, but being really clear on, okay, what is it that you're going to sell it for? How much are you going to sell it for?
So I know in the past we've used the example of somebody that's bought a sort of pretty little caravan put it on some ground, and then thinking that they can buy a couple more and build a business from that, which sounds fun actually. But there is a limit to scalability there, isn't there?
Of course, yeah, and you're buying a high value asset. So it's a bit like going into selling yachts. You're buying high value assets, so think of the cash flow you'd need up front. I mean, that's an extreme example. But yeah, thinking of your example of a vintage caravan, the marketplace is going to be limited for maybe for selling, 20 of those. But you've got to lay out an awful lot of capital to get them off the ground to be able to rent all of them, shall we say, at the same period of time, so 52 weeks a year. And you may get bookings between, July and September and nothing through other parts of the year. So the scalability is really important. Can you scale this business, and what's the cost of scaling? Because scalability isn't always about the phone ringing, it's about what the cost of it is. What's it going to cost you to scale the business? And very often there's three things involved. It's people, space and technology. The fourth one is actually equipment, because equipment is a big cost. And they rely on cash flow. So you've got to have money to be able to take on people to expand. You've got to have money to be able to take on premises, for example, deposits and so on, to invest in technology, because we know software is not cheap. Every time you take on something, it's a monthly fee or a one-off. And then equipment, which is, in that example, would be the caravan. So it's been really crucial knowing how much money do I need to get this off the ground. And something may be scalable on paper, but ultimately, how are you going to buy the assets and how are you going to fund the assets? And that requires some real soul searching and some real deep digging on the facts and the figures to be clear on what it is you're going to earn from this service or sale.
So are you a fan of bootstrapping? People should sort of self-fund until they get it going, or would you say go for a bit of funding as soon as possible and scale up and get it going?
I mean, there's multiple ways you can build funds in a business. There is bootstrapping, so literally starting as a side hustle, tapping into whatever savings you've got. If you've got a redundancy pot, brilliant. But I mean, people are frightened of spending a huge amount of money in the beginning, of course, and it depends on how risk averse you are. You could consider things like crowdfunding if you've got an idea that's really for social good. You could look at getting bank loans. You could look at getting family friend loans or other peer-to-peer lending. Or you can, as I said, self-fund. There's so many different ways, or of course getting investors as well. There are many ways. I wouldn't necessarily recommend bootstrapping in the beginning, because if you need to buy assets, it's going to be really difficult to do so, and you may not be able to scale if you need to hire people and you're relying on the money that you've got in the bank. But I think this comes back to the gut, actually. You've got to find what the business is doing. You've got to get into the business and perhaps bootstrap right in the beginning to go, well, what's working, what's not. Fish things out before you go hell for leather and make huge investments. And then get a feel of what's actually working and where you need to spend the money. Obviously, this requires a little bit more than gut. So bootstrapping's brilliant, but if you have a great idea that you need to expand and scale quickly, particularly so it's technology, it needs to be out there quickly, you need to think about other sources of investment. But be really mindful when you take investment. It looks great when somebody's offering you £100,000 to invest in your great idea, but they might want 50% of your shares in your business to do so. So there's this real balance between keeping the business your own and being able to self-fund. So in an ideal world, yes, self-funding without lending and without taking investments is ideal, but not always realistic.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my jingle jangle, my doorbell.
So you mentioned, yes, people, premises, equipment. There's another thing in there, actually, time, isn't there? So
it's a different commodity, but it's certainly there. Time is really important. How much time is it going to take you, and how much time is it going to cost you? From the day I started my business, I've always used the analogy of if you're working from home and you then take 3 hours off to do the ironing, that you could pay someone £7. I mean, what's the going rate now? But let's call it £10 an hour to get someone to do your ironing for you. But you could earn £50 an hour for that time in doing so. Are you going to spend that time getting your ironing done? So it's actually your time is valuable, and you do have to look at when we sell services and not goods, particularly as we're quite used to selling by the hour or blocks of time, day rates. But when we sell products, we sometimes forget about our time. We look at we're buying for 50p, we're going to sell it for £1. Great, that's a double markup. But how much time is going to be involved in selling 5 of those? So yeah, time is crucial. And it's probably not something you'd explore in the business plan, but it's something you need to factor in. And again, you might rely a little bit on gut, because you're not going to know how much time something's going to do. But getting into a good habit of recording your time is good practice. But be realistic on whether you're selling time space or goods or what it is you're selling. And if you're selling time, you know, what's the investment that you need to make, how much that time is costing you elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah. Because yeah, it's the one thing you can't get back, and also it's the one thing that will burn you out, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So if you're working 16-hour days or 14-hour days, we've all been there when we've started a business up, we're working round the clock. Some of that is you have to do the groundwork. Of course, in the beginning, it's not simply about evaluating your time, go, well, that's 16 hours and I'm not getting paid for 16 hours. Of course, it's not as simple as that. And this is where bootstrapping comes in as well. You're funding, self-funding it, but also doing, you know, spending all the hours getting things right, you know, fiddling with an Instagram post or whatever that might be. There's a lot of time spent and wasted in a business. And again, this is as the business grows and expands, you'll be able to explore where your time becomes dead and what's your chargeable time. But and getting out of that habit of thinking I must do a 14-hour day because I've run a business, and actually working into smaller chunks of time. But yeah, really being clear and analysing the time that you spend on your business and how much time you want to spend in your business going forward. Because as I said, in the beginning, you're going to, but later on, you have a choice, and that's what you've got to work towards, that goal. So I think I would put time in there with goals. How many hours a day do I actually want to work? Include that in goals and targets.
Okay, okay. So when you are putting a business plan together, even if it's just for yourself, not to raise funding, what are the main things that you think should go in there? You've mentioned time, goals, targets.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Ethos. Your ethos needs to be, what's the business about? So some people might call that your purpose, your why, whatever you want to call it or frame it as. What's the ethos of the business? What does the business do? I help women make more money. I help women, or I help clients do X, Y, Z. Whatever that ethos and purpose and intention is, be really clear and have clarity on what the business does. That clarity, that single statement on your business plan will be the one bit of information that stays in your head forever. And that'll be the bit that becomes a USB or your elevator pitch and everything else. That clear statement of what you do will become your sole purpose of everything you wake up to do. Make sure it's on there. And it might be a couple of lines, it might be a paragraph, but just make sure it's there. Your sustainability. How are you going to sustain the business? So am I going to be here in 6 months' time, a year, 5 years? And crucially, how am I going to do it? And that's really important. Financial targets are also crucially important. Again, I'm not talking about the detailed analytics and forecasts, just some top line stuff in terms of turnover. I want the business to make X in X period of time. So in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, perhaps. And these are for guidelines. This is to keep your eyes on a target, on a focus, rather than to go, I must do that or else I fail. This is about working towards something and having it written down. So it's a bit like putting a goal in your business plan, but it's also a crucial part of the business plan. Marketing is really important to include in the business plan. How am I going to make the sales? So it's sales and marketing. How am I going to sell my product or my service to the clients that I dream of, that sit within my ethos? You know, what's the ultimate, how am I going to make this business happen? And also, I mean, there's a few extra bits, and I can give you sort of a list of things I would include. But what your sort of growth formula is, which is a bit part of the sustainability, how you intend to expand and grow. So what the sort of the plan is. So they're the key things. And then beyond that, you would just expand into, ideal target market, target clients, all of those things. And the more you have on that one-page piece of document, it doesn't have to be 10 pages, it's 1-2 pages, the more clarity it's going to give you to drive forward and follow that business plan and then readjust it. A business plan is of life, it's not set once it's written. Just keep readjusting it, keep dipping into it, changing it. That doesn't work. Or actually, I've changed my 1 year goal. Actually, my client base has changed. I no longer want to work with 5-year-olds. I want to work with 10-year-olds. Whatever that might be, change and evolve the business plan as you grow. And that's a crucial part of any growing business. I still rewrite my business plan 10 years in. I still revisit it annually and probably quarterly and just go, am I on target? Am I doing what I set out to achieve?
Yeah. You mentioned about expansion, and obviously you touched on burning out and there will come a time, hopefully, your business will grow so much that you will need either to take people on or outsource. And I know that you obviously have a team at Fuse, and you outsource with people for social media and that sort of thing. So any tips on which way to go, for instance?
Comes back to that Venn diagram about the passion, the skill set, and what can you do to earn a living. Be really, really clear on what your skill set is. If you are brilliant at coming up with concepts and designs, and you're going for a sort of a pattern of a new design, you're probably not naturally going to be really great at the marketing or at the IT, or maybe you are, or at the finances or at the accounting. So as a small business, don't expect to do everything yourself. Be really clear on what your strengths are. And that's a really nice, actually, an exercise to do is do a SWOT analysis, do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. But the key thing here is your strengths. Do a strengths test. Review your strengths honestly, ask people to assess them as well, and work within your strengths. Don't try and fix your weaknesses. That's when you get somebody else on board. Outsource whenever you can, wherever it's feasibly possible, of course financially, but also where you're going to get the result. If somebody's going to know better than you or be better than you at doing something, outsource it, because you'll get a better result quicker. Obviously be clear on the outcome that you want, but outsource. So whether that's employing or outsourcing to a VA or other self-employed freelancer, whatever your resources that you need, whether you need someone full-time, be really clear on what it is that you know that you can't do well, and let somebody else do that for you. And the other pointer here is not to be afraid of employing someone. As we go down the line and we expand our small businesses, we get terrified of taking people on because we're frightened of the contracts and obligations, and we're often frightened of employing people. And there are some allowances from HMRC when you're employing people for national insurance. Yes, you have to pay some pension for them, but you can get so much when you employ somebody and they're committed to the hours, they're committed to the work, that you might not get from a freelancer who's going to work on ad hoc. So don't be frightened to employ someone. That would be my other tip. Long-winded version.
Because that's an interesting thing to hear in what's turned into the gig economy, and lots of people outsourcing and talking about agile teams and so on. Actually not being afraid to employ someone and have them as part of your brand.
Well, you may have heard the word agile is probably one of the most overused words in sort of project management and businesses in the last couple of years, and there's been lots of talks about agile. I recently attended something with Cranfield University, and they were talking about agility and how, it was mainly around project management and how the term agile is used. But let's take away the corporate sort of explanation of that word, and let's just think about being agile and what that actually means. It means being able to adapt, being able to move quickly. It means also being able to evolve quickly, or mainly adapt, but also it means just you have an idea, you can make it happen, you know the right people to get it done. And if this isn't working, pivot, get something else to make it happen. So it's crucial to have agility, or to be agile in your skill set, I think.
Yeah, and the SWOT analysis is a good way to start that, isn't it? I think the other thing that I've noticed is that a lot of business owners fall into the trap of hiring another mini-me, somebody that they like, that reminds them of them.
Yep.
So the SWOT analysis is a way to stop that, isn't it?
Yeah, I've seen that happen so many times. I've done it. I find people that feel really perfectly aligned with me, and but then I've forgotten that, because I want somebody just like me who can do what I do. But that's fine if you're wanting someone to take care of the role that you do. So if we think back to skill set and strengths, as a tax advisor, I'm pretty strong at my tax expertise. So I'm going to bring on another tax person who's got similar characteristics to me, because I do want someone to step into my shoes and feel and help and support my clients in the same way that I do. But I certainly wouldn't want my IT provider to have the same skill set as me, because that would be bonkers, because then we just wouldn't get done. So yeah, absolutely, being clear on your skill set of what you need, but don't employ the mini-me because you get on. In most instances, in businesses, particularly in partnerships, the yin and yang relationship is what works really well. Get people who are the opposite to you. It's very sort of putting people in a box. But if you're left brain, work with people who are right brain, and vice versa. If you're creative, work with technical people. Use people who are great at data analysis if you're not. And explore, the relationships. You don't have to love every single person you work with, but you find a mutual common ground, a respect and a working relationship, and that's what's crucial. Can you get the job done together? That's what's important, not whether you want to have a beer with them.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, it's important to have a beer with them as well.
Yeah. All oils the wheels, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, it's important to have personalities, right? But I think the point is, we all know that Richard Branson hasn't got a team of other mini Richard Bransons behind him. He's got a team of people, of experts that deliver the services and the needs to him that he can't do for himself, or that he doesn't want to do for himself as well. And that's the key for most business owners. They'll have a team of people, successful business owners, they'll have a team of people that will fulfill their weaknesses. Or their holes, or the bits they don't want to do.
Yeah. So just before we started this call, before I pressed record, we were talking about premises, weren't we?
Yeah.
And how you've just signed a lease for your another 5 years, was it?
5 more years, yep.
5 more years on premises. But of course, you know, we're coming out of lockdown, so there are going to be a lot of people there who are thinking, do I need premises? Is this the way the future's going? Can I just do this on my kitchen table? Any thoughts on when you do need premises and when it's not so necessary?
I think we've all learned in this time, in this last 4 months, that working from home can be great, but can be pretty awful as well. Can be dire. I'm sure we've all got on a Zoom call with a nice top on, or a shirt and or blouse, and then put tracksuit bottoms on the bottom. We've all had our fluffy slippers, or whatever slippers we wear, at the bottom of our feet because we think no one can see them. There are days when we've not put our makeup on, we've not done our hair. So working from home is great, but it can also be quite dysfunctional as well. It can be unmotivating. But if it works for you and you have a defined space, that's really crucial. I think setting a space where you have boundaries and borders and people don't disturb you and you're not interrupted, you go to that workspace to do your work, great. But a lot of people don't have that, and they end up on the kitchen table, and there's no switch off between life and work. They're kind of constantly pulled in different directions, and that's when you end up doing the 16 hours.
Yeah.
Because you're always dipping in and out, and there's no real sort of clear start and end of the day. So there are some crucial things that you must do around mindset, of course, setting the boundaries, having clear defined hours and time, having a clear defined space. But I think in answer to your question, that's sort of a bit bigger than that, is when do you take on premises? Probably when you've expanded those, when you're unable to fulfill those 5 things, the boundaries, the clear thinking space, and uninterrupted, and being able to work from home. That's the time when because I'm really productive when I work from home, but my team aren't necessarily productive in the same way with me. They will independently. So I think working from home is great to get a job done, to work on a project, to finish something. But if you've got a team of people, you probably need to be in the same room more often, so you can bounce ideas, people learn from each other. And I know I'm slightly bouncing around here, but one of the thoughts that comes to mind is we've taken on trainee accountants over the years, and they learn through listening. They learn through listening when they're not as experienced as one of the senior team members. They're going to learn from phone calls, meetings, conversations that happen, and just general chit chat around the office. When they're at home, they're not taking on that learning experience. So if you're building up a team that are young or inexperienced and you're training a team, it's crucial to be in an office. So that might be a trigger point to get an office when you're about to take on an apprentice, a trainee, or something like that. When you need a space, particularly if there's 2 of you, to work with somebody so you can delegate effectively. So I don't know about you, but when I work on my own, I don't delegate. And even though I have a big team, I sort of forget, I just do it myself. And of course, that's not effective if you're a business owner. You need to be able to delegate, that's crucial. And it doesn't mean you can't do both, but I think we all need some sort of working space that after a short period will not be the home. So yeah, great, side hustle, bootstrap, do everything from home, and then you will kind of know. I think this slightly comes back to gut as well. You'll know when enough's enough and you're not working productively or successfully.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's going to be different for everybody, isn't it? And also,
exactly, yeah, it is. And there's no one trigger point. I think if you need to take on people, it's really important to have, if you're employing people, it's really important to be in the same space, even if it's not 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, but share some sort of space with each other to bounce ideas and also to be able to delegate effectively.
Yeah. I mean, even if they're not young or being trained, it's still a good idea for them to know how you like to work and to pick up things
And
that you might have said in conversation. Yeah.
And you can have Slack. We use Salesforce and use Salesforce chatter. So we're constantly talking and sharing what's going on throughout the team. So I know every day we have a morning meeting with the team on Zoom, and we also have a meeting at the end of the day, which is sort of a recap. We know what each other are working on throughout the day, but what you're not picking up on is the conversation that somebody might have with a client, or the interaction that somebody might have where you learn from, or it might just trigger a thought that you then expand and develop from. And my creative thinking has often come from being around other people and being in that environment. So I think it's about changing environments as well.
Yeah.
I think if you're at home with kids, that can't be easy to work from
hard.
home.
Yeah, it would be hard. Yeah.
But you might be forced to in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant. Well, some really, really good stuff there. Just wanted to wrap up actually thinking about business goals and timings, because I know when you're starting a business, you might have this idea of how you want it to be, but the path is hazy about how you're going to get there. And I know from having worked with you in the past, you're a big fan of shorter goals, sort of 90-day goals, aren't you? So tell me a little bit about why 90-day goals and how to set them without basically setting yourself up for failure and being too, making it too overwhelming.
Yeah, a couple of things here. I still have my 10-year big, hairy, audacious goal over there in the pipeline. And I always say it's in my periphery. I'm not staring at every single day going, that's what I've got to achieve or else, because I'm not really living in the moment. But it is in my periphery. I know it's there. I kind of know where I want it in the next 10 years. It's not exact, but it's the starting point. And I've got my goals work backwards. But crucially, I also have my goals for the next 30 days, the next 90 days, so the next 1 to 3 months, and the next 6 months, and the next year. And they just keep me on track. They keep me really focused to know working towards a sort of an outcome. Some people don't like the word goal as well. Some people like outcome, whatever that word is for you.
Targets, yeah.
Target, yeah, you're working towards that. And the key thing is not to expect 100%. When you work towards goals and targets, a bit different. If I want to run a marathon, that's you have or you haven't. If you fell over and hurt your ankle at mile 25, would you still say, oh, I've never run a marathon? Or would you still be able to say, well, I've run a marathon, I didn't make it to the end. Would you be disappointed? Would you accept the circumstances? And I think that's what we do, is because sometimes we're perfectionists, we expect to hit that goal bang on, or we're disappointed. The point of a goal is to me something to work towards with actionable steps you can do. I work in 3s or 5s, 3 action steps or 5 steps I can do to achieve that goal. And then I get them and go, right, that's a big chunk. I'll break that down into another 3 or 5 steps that I need to do. So this is really different from a to-do list, which is pick up the dry cleaning, blah, blah, blah. Keep that really separate. Your goal to-do list or your action plan should be totally separate. And I think working towards it with the idea that it's towards it, not to fulfill it. And then you won't ever worry about that word failure, because failure doesn't exist. You learn from mistakes. You get to 90% of the goal or 80%, I'm always 80-20. As long as you hit 80% of your target, you are on track. You are winning. And whereas some people, they have to hit 101 to be winning. Forget that perfectionism in business. Aim towards it, set dedicated action plans, and be happy with 80%. And then when you get there or you get close, realign the goal. No one says that because you've written it down in 3 months' time, you've got to do it. You might change your mind in a month and go, no, it's not working for me, hate it. It's not what I want to achieve. Just realign the goals, reset them, and start again.
Brilliant. Anything else that you would like to add?
I think going back to what I said at the beginning, really about gut. In business, you do trust your gut. It's so important to trust your gut. If you feel a client's wrong for you, if you feel a situation is wrong for you, learn to trust the gut. But don't use the gut to make crucial decisions. It will help steer you. It will help steer you feel if something's, because they say if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. And that's true in business, but you wouldn't rely on your gut solely to make every key business decision. So it's just arm yourself with facts, figures, and gut.
I think there's something I'd add to that as well, is if you are talking about your business and you talk about it with friends or family that have never run a business, then while they might, might be nice to hear, oh, that's a great idea, or da-da-da, you actually need to talk about it with people who have and who know what they're talking about, don't you?
Yeah, find a tribe, you know, get a peer-to-peer group going. Your family and your friends who've never run a business are the worst mentors you'll ever get in your life, because they'll be blah, 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 this won't work, well, what happens if this, or they'll be telling you you're amazing when you might not be in, you know, in the wrong circumstance. You need people who shine the light for you, show you the way, and will also help you get that fire in your belly, will excite you to you know, gravitate towards that next goal, that next ambition. And when you run a business, you need to work with other business people who've had that experience, who know what that fire in the belly feels like. And although somebody may have had that feeling about a job, don't know about something until you've really been in it and been there and done it. So yeah, peer-to-peer group, find yourself a group of people who are your cheerleaders.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Faye. And all the details on how to reach Faye will be below the video. So yeah, thank you.